Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. Today we're going to be going over Strawman #2 because it's Halloween-ish season, and this month we're doing all scary stuff and horror stuff and stuff like that. And this is supposedly a horror comic because it says a frightening story that packs all of the page-turning narrative force of a compelling novel. So it's got to be scary, right? But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own work. This is Random Access. It's a 12-page, full-size, sometimes full color. I'm going back to color. It's black and white for now, so I can catch up. And you can pick these up at Patreon /Alexander Turbin or Alex Turbin, or you can go to my website, alexanderturbin.com, and check these out. Or you could just message me at alexturbin04401 at Yahoo or alexturbin04401 at instagram.com. And so, yeah, they're easily and readily available, especially Mutandis, Cyrene, Random Access, all of my stuff that I have created in my comic book making career. I'm still a little nasally and stuffy and stuff because I've been sick for the last few weeks, actually the last few days. And so that's why the Monday, usually when I put a video out on Monday, but it was late. But I'm going to try to go to this new schedule of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'm kind of packing in this one on the day's Thursday, which is what I usually do. But anyway. Here's the videos. So Strawman #2. This is a very unusual book. And I can't remember if I got #1. I feel like I did, but this #2 has nothing to do with #1. And I really don't understand. There's a lot of things that are very confusing, and it's not a power comic by any means. It's very well written and it's very well drawn, and I'm going to say that right off the bat. So it's not a power comic, but if you looked at it right like this, you might think that it's got some powerness to it. One of the things that might be a little misleading is because of the color. This pink and purple and blue color of the cover and the layout. I'm not a very strong layout artist for covers. I kind of get a little wonky, and I usually leave things a little plain, like Random Access or Mutandis or whatever. I usually just have the title and then the day or the number and how much it is, and then my little Takua thing, and maybe a border around it or whatever. But this Strawman is kind of the same thing. It doesn't have much on it. This little thing is good. I like this. I think if the background had been black, I think I would have been okay with that. But really, whoever laid this out, they did not know what they were doing. This Strawman should have been big up here, and then this too, and the All-American should have been at the top, or vice versa, or whatever. There's so much negative space that really does not need to be there in this big blazing yellow too, and the whole thing does not convey into horror at all. Maybe it's fiction that would be perfectly okay, but. Also, another thing is, so you get into this and you're thinking that it's a horror comic, which, there's a lot of horror comics out there. Usually they have lots of, zombies, vampires, creatures, monsters. But when you read the beginning, the introduction, you kind of realize that it's not going to be about monsters and horror and stuff like that, or traditional horror. It's going to be more like a psychological horror. So you really gear yourself up for that. And, so you've got this fiction because the writer, or one of the writers, is talking about how he's looking forward to branching away from his usual science fiction, fantasy kind of action stuff and going more into just a regular fiction and more of a not fantasy stuff, and which is really I can identify with that. I have a comic book that I made called The Max, which I will show at some point, probably soonish. That I'm just not happy with it, and but it's a biography of Max Bear. So I can understand what the writers and the artists are going to go talking about when they want to branch off and do a lot of different things. And so many comics, not so much nowadays, but before, were just they were pigeonholed. They went through phases of superheroes, westerns, romance. But they're basically known for superheroes or horror with the EC years. But I mean, you have phases, and that's perfectly okay. But comics are so dominated by superheroes and action and stuff like that. It's really kind of would be refreshing to see just some plain old fiction, kind of like Road to Perdition, which I definitely will review at some point. But that is just a great work of fiction. It does have action and stuff, but it's really just a great work of fiction. And I really kind of would like to read more works of less genre specific comics that are just a little bit more nuanced, I guess. So that's my rant anyway about what comic books is it's not a genre, it's a medium, and you can do anything in the world with it. You don't have to be pigeonholed to superheroes or barbarians or whatever. Just because I like to do superheroes and barbarians and stuff doesn't mean that everybody does. And I also actually like to read lots of different things. So if anybody has any suggestions for different stuff that's not of that kind of stuff, fantasy and stuff, let me know in the comment section, because I think a lot of people would like to see more of that stuff. So here's the story. Gonna get into the story, then gonna get into the writing, and then into the art as usual. So it starts off, these two couples, this couple, they're looking in a store. It's also the back cover, which they colored rather, which is pretty interesting. I kind of wish they had done it a little differently. You can see through this Santa, so you're actually looking at their reflection. So if there had been some like glass streaks or something to show that it was a reflection, please ignore the stain there. But if there was some sort of reflective glass, reflective light, same thing here. I mean, there's streaks here. Why aren't there streaks here? So that's a missed opportunity, because if you're going to use, the interior first page to be the back page, and you're going to color and everything, then you should really kind of let everybody know what it is. And this whole idea of looking through a window and being the characters in the window, that's a great scene. And I actually have one in Mutandis, either one or two, I can't remember, where he's looking out at the skylight, and you see a reflection of the main villain, but you also see in his reflection, you see the cityscape. So I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do with this kind of thing, and they just kind of botch it by not going far enough. I think anyway. These streaks I think could have been a lot more pronounced too. So you have this couple. We're just gonna get into the story. You have this couple, and they are just talking away. There's a lot of dialogue, and they're talking about how they're in love and they have a baby coming, and only his father is like going to be a grandfather, and he has issues with his father, and they're just kind of leaving because he works as an optometrist, his own place, and they're just going to the car, and they're driving home. So it's just basic, your basic conversation about their life and stuff. And so they kind of leave that there. And then they're just kind of still talking about things, and having this playful banter, and he's saying how lucky he is, and she's saying how lucky she is, and then the baby starts to kick, and it's all lovey-dovey time. It's very formulated, I guess, where you have a tragedy in the beginning. That this is a little creepy, and then it's like formulated as far as a Disney movie or any kind of really stuff. Usually there's a lot of things that start with tragedies. I mean, every comic book story pretty much starts with it as a tragedy. But they're just talking about stuff, and they're happy, and but this is where I get lost. I get lost a lot in this comic book, and I've gone back and forth and back and forth from pages and pages. It's not the artist's fault whatsoever. He is a fantastic narrative artist. He's a great artist as far as I'm concerned, and I wouldn't mind looking at more of his stuff. He's really very confident. He doesn't have a huge style influence, but I'm always getting ahead of myself because I want to talk about the art and stuff. But you have these two, and they're on the floor in front of the fireplace, and then apparently his father is looking in behind them. I mean, I don't know. You can't really tell if this is the same time. If he was looking behind them, then they would hear him. If they don't hear him, they're not at the father's house. So it's very confusing. And then it says February 25th, 1978. This is another thing. It doesn't have any beginning date or time on, so you don't know if this is, February 26th or February 24th or 1982. You don't know this, or this is 75. You don't know when it starts, so you don't know what this February 25th, 1978 is. You don't know if that's after or before. So it just really makes what could be a great setup for different time periods and stuff and going from scene to scene is kind of ruined because you don't have an original time period. But you have somebody on the floor, which again, it's a missed opportunity. I don't know. I don't think it's the artist, because it's supposed to be like a paradigm or paradox or something of them laying on the floor being happy and him laying on the floor being unhappy. I think this is highly, I don't know what highly influenced by Daredevil's Born Again. I think this came out in 1989, and I'm not sure when Born Again came out. I'll have to look that up. If anybody has that right handy of when Born Again was, when Born Again came out, then let me know, because it has a lot of visual cues that are close to what happened in Born Again, Daredevil Born Again. So you have this person on the floor, and then you have this guy who is the father. We don't know. And you have another character, and they're kind of talking about they're kind of talking about medical procedure or something. I don't know. It's. I know they're trying to build up suspense, and I know they only want to give you a kernel of information at a time. But I just kind of wish there was a little bit more of an arrow in the direction that we're supposed to be thinking. They could have said, like here it is. We should weep for men at their birth, not their death. Funny how that sticks in the mind after all these years. My son is as predictable as he is weak, Willie. It will be hours before he's finally moved to action. That should give you plenty of time. Just one question, Doc Stonewall. Do I have to burn the straw man nice and clean, or can I have fun? I don't care how you do it. Just do it tonight. So, I mean, it's building something up. This is the son. This is the father. This is the son. Something happened, and it's perfectly okay to kind of be in the dark a little bit. But I mean, let's go on, and maybe you guys will think that them jumping story arcs and story plot points around makes any sense to you, because it really kind of made it confusing for me. Here's another panel that I really think is one of the reasons I think it's influenced by Frank Miller and Dave Mazzucchelli in Born Again. This looks very much like Born Again, and it's just music. I think it's the Doors. So there's a lot of musical references in this. They talk about wanting to listen to music back here, and he's like, "What do you want to listen to? Cream, Jimi Hendrix, or blah blah blah." And so it just kind of it goes through this, and I don't know if this is I Am the Walrus. I'm not recognizing the lyrics here. The words warble, wet, bloated with malice, getting there but unconcerned. foaming in streets, the dogs burn, foaming in the streets, the ants churn. I don't know if that's I Am the Walrus or something like that. I mean, it's Jim Morrison, so it could be a Doors song. If anybody knows, let me know. So it's this character. He's doing some drugs. He's sweating. He's doing some kind of weird knife ritual thing. He strips down and cuts his hand and puts blood on his face. And he's like going through this ritual, and we think he's going to be a killer, and he's going to ritually kill somebody. We don't know why. All of this is just the lyrics of the song, and he's getting ready, and he's like bam, 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 and he's knocking on the door. And is this? It's not, because he doesn't have a mustache. Who is this guy? We don't know who that is. But he says Dr. Miller. Don't know who Dr. Miller is. So we don't have any frame of reference of who it is, but we know, or we can infer that he is going to kill him. I guess he's dressed like a killer and stuff, and this is why he says "I am the Walrus." So I don't know. I don't think that this is the "I Am the Walrus" song by the Beatles. But then it goes to February 26th. So this is the day after this whole scene. We don't know if this is way before. I think it's way before. And then we switch to the day after somebody got killed. It wasn't his father. I thought it was because of the hair. I really thought it was him because of the hair. They have similar styles of haircut. Although his is blackish and his is blackish too. But he doesn't seem to have a mustache, and his nose looks different. So don't really know who that is. So we go back to Craig, because that's the name of the main character. It's Craig, and he's actually talking to the police chief, and he's saying that his father has kidnapped his baby. And then the police chief. So see, this is how you infer, or you give information slowly, but not so slowly that you get confused, because they're saying this in the same panel, in the same page, these same pages, where he's talking about, your father just called me, and he told me that your son died, and it's so soon after your wife has died, and so I kind of understood what was going on here, because he's thinking his father's done all kinds of crazy stuff. But I thought that this was the father. So I thought that the father was dead. So I was confused about that as well. But then maybe it's in the future. But it says it's in the past. So anyway, he's talking to the police chief, and the chief is like, no, that's crazy. Your boy died in the hospital, and your wife died, and your father told me everything about it. And, you got into trouble, you got drunk and stuff. And, you're just going crazy because all of this horrible stuff happened, and we understand. So then he's like, he turns around, the police chief turns around, and Craig is gone. Craig goes to the only other person that he thinks will believe him or can, continue talking about this conspiracy or whatever. And if it's not the police, then you go to the next logical conclusion, which is the press. So he goes to the press, which is, I'm assuming, one of his good friends or something. And he starts talking about his father and stuff. And the reporter actually understands, and he believes him, because he's been looking into his father. And his father has had some sort of deep state ties, or actually he hasn't told him that yet. I don't think. Yeah. The Craig is talking about how his father was doing some sort of genetic experiments on his wife and on his son, all during her pregnancy, and that they were trying to manipulate the genes and make a different person, the perfect person, or something like that. Something weird and crazy like that. So he's got a diary of his father's, which was saying what he was doing and what he had done to the wife, and what he was doing to the baby and stuff, and how he wanted to cure the humanity of disease, because I guess there was some sort of radiation poisoning or something that his son had, Craig had. So he'd had some sort of radiation poisoning, and he had like a mutated hand or a mutated something, which he doesn't hear. So maybe all of this is in his mind. He's got a some sort of mutation that the father is trying to get rid of, and I think the wife died of this. No, learned that my wife was murdered to prove his theories. So the wife was killed, the baby was genetically modified, and all so that the father could get genetic proof of what he was capable of creating. So the the reporter is, like I said, he's completely sympathetic and he understands and he believes Craig about what's going on. And he tells Craig about some of the findings that he's had about his father, where his father was part of some political thing, and it was like this right wing, super like a Nazi kind of party, and that he was trying to become president and all this stuff. So it's very conspiracy theory oriented. So the reporter is trying to tell him that he believes him and that they have to do stuff to get this story out and to make everything believable. And he's also like, you have to cover yourself and you have to maybe get out of town and go somewhere, hide from these people because they're gonna try to get him and kill him and stuff. So then he leaves. Craig leaves, and apparently this is the same guy that he was talking to, the father was talking to earlier on. So I think they're having, is this him though? That's not him. So they're trying to manipulate the son. Is that him? I think that might be him. I wish there were some visual cues as to what character is what. And I think he's calling the father because I think they're manipulating him. It almost seems like it's a Jacob's Ladder thing where you don't know what's real and what's not real. And so Craig goes to his house, gets all of his belongings, packs them in his car, and he's ready to leave. And he's leaving Gate. I guess Gate is the name of the town, and Panhandle to the Doyd to the Panhandle. So they must be in Florida. Never really said before that, which I thought it was supposed to be cold. And they light a fire. So I mean, does it ever get cold enough to light a fire in Florida? But anyway, he's going back to his house, or he's going to somewhere. He's going to see Dr. Miller. I don't know who this Dr. Miller is. I don't know who Dr. Miller is. I'm very confused as to who Dr. Miller is. It's not his father, I don't think. So don't you love it when comics are just so confusing that you can't understand what's going on? And anyway, here's somebody. He's going to Dr. Miller. He goes in. Dr. Miller is laying on the floor dead, and here's in blood the Lizard King. So we don't know who this is. I don't know who this is. I don't know why he's dead, and I don't know what connection he has to Craig. So that is the end of the book, and then they have a preview of some other cartoony comics stuff that's come out, and this is all tied into the Innovation and Malibu and stuff, that whole organizational chain of comics that came out at that time period, where it was one guy really just kind of pulling the strings on all of this stuff, getting comics made, which is, good for us. But anyway, to get to the writing, I can't really give this great reviews because of the plot. The plot moves very weirdly. It's hard to understand what's going on, but it's also fun to read and it's easy to read. Like the scripting and the dialogue is really great. And like I always say, characters have their different voices. They have natural reactions. It's very natural dialogue when they're talking about their newborn child and his animosity with his father and stuff. It's very believable and forthcoming and flowing. It all flows. All of the dialogue really flows. It's just the plot. If there had some stuff that was tied some of these things together, like they do a little bit with the February 25th, 1978, and then it goes to February 26th, 1978. So you know the progression of time there, but you don't know when this is. You can only assume by later on that this is, weeks before or days or months before. She's not very big, so it could be months before. But he hears the baby kick or feels the baby kick, so it could be weeks before. So we just don't know. We don't have a frame of reference for time, and having that in comics is so important. You have to have that frame of reference of time passing, because we don't have actual movement in comics, so we can't say, this happens, this happens, this happens in a visual kind of way. You have to really tell people this happened this day, this happened that day, this happened that day. They do that in movies and TVs as well. So why wouldn't you do that in comics? You got to make sure the reader knows all of the information that they need to know to not get lost. And that's what happened with me. So as far as the writing is very enjoyable. I enjoyed the writing. It was very nice. The art is really, really great. I really like this guy's art. It's very standard though. Like there's no real dynamic style, and I'm really drawn to like something that is unique and different in the art, whether it's a strong line or lots of shadows, or funky little wiggly ticks, or I'm gonna actually have a series kind of delving into why people like certain things they do. Like, why do people like Mike Mignola's art so much? It's obviously heavy shadows. It's obviously his line work. But then you also have Todd McFarlane. Why do people love his line work? His artwork over something else. So I'm going to delve into that really heavily at some point, because I'm really fascinated by why people enjoy certain things about certain artists and they don't enjoy things about other artists. It's really fascinating to me, and I'm hoping that you guys join me on that treasure hunt, I guess, of why people enjoy certain artwork. But I really do enjoy this guy's artwork. His narrative art is really great. His backgrounds are great. I love his expressions, his figures, his emotions. He's got lots of great emotions. He doesn't ever have talking heads. It's a lot of he's just really very professional looking. He's great for black and white. He's got these lines for his shadow in the foreground. He's got great foreground, background. The only thing I kind of wish that he had a little bit more was bigger bigs and smaller smalls as far as panels and stuff like that. Like, here's a big face in the panel, but it would have been kind of nice if that had been a bigger panel. It just, and like his foreshortening is a little not quite as dynamic, but the way that this is done, it goes with the story. So it's very, I'm completely happy with the artist, and I think he's really he's a quality artist, which I really enjoy. So my only problem with this is that I get lost. I get lost in the story, and I don't really know exactly who is doing what and why. And that is really kind of the biggest thing about a comic book. If you get lost in the plot, it's, what else is there? Also, this is number 2. What the hell happened in number 1? This is almost a self-contained story, or starts from, in the beginning of whatever story this is to going on to the end. So what the heck happened in issue number 1 that may have brought this all on? Maybe in issue 1 that explains all of the stuff that I'm lost about. That is completely possible. But it doesn't make it better, because if you're lost in the second issue, if I just picked this up, which I very well could have just picked up number 2 and not have picked up number 1, I'm lost. I'm probably not going to pick up number 3 because I'm lost and I don't understand what's going on. And it was $1.95, and at the time that was a lot of money for a comic book, especially a black and white. So anyway, I'm going to give this a review of an 8. Yeah, I could go lower because I was so confused and lost, and I had to flip back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But the artwork really lifts it up, and the dialogue and the writing itself, the scripting itself, is really, really, really easy to read and pleasurable to read. I was never bored while I was reading, so that really kind of makes up for it. So I'm going to give it an 8. Um, so yeah, Strawman number 2, I'm giving an 8. Uh, Let me know if you guys have this. If you've read number 1, clue me in, fill me in on what happened. If there's, how long did this series go? If anybody has any kind of information about this, please let me know, because I've looked up stuff and I really can't find that much about it. All I find when I Google it is just it sends me to eBay or to Amazon or whatever, to my comic shop, to where they're selling it or something. So I really need some information other than the artists and the writers. I know who they are and I know the other stuff that they were doing. But anyway, this has been a long video. Thank you for watching. And Strawman number 2 from 1989, and All American Comics, and I'm giving it an 8. And if you guys are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. I go through a lot of black and white, old 80s and 90s comics and other just different stuff, not your usual cartoonist kayfabe kind of stuff. I'm going to go through all kinds of different stuff. And I've got like 150 other videos, so you should check out those videos if you're interested in this kind of work. Which I know, I mean, there are a lot of us out there who like this kind of weird niche stuff. But anyway, consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and I'm going to be going to a 3-video week shortly, hopefully. And let me know what you guys think about that. If you think 3 videos is too much, then let me know about that too. And so thanks for watching, and I will see you next time, and keep on creating.